This is Critical Nonsense, our high lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks me about our disposition to dispose, and he makes some funny sheep jokes. Not a separate topic. He just makes some funny sheep jokes. Funny sheep jokes. Say that 5 times fast. Funny sheep jokes. Funny sheep jokes.
Woo! What a man, what a man, what a man. This is Joey. Just a random clip that comes into my head at the beginning of every episode.
Jolly good man.
And this is what an executive producer and a little bit of shoop Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Shoopy. Emerson likes salt and pepper of recent.
Salt and pepper? Who are you? It's salt and pepper. Come on.
Sorry. Salt and pepper. She's been like at some point she heard Push It, like it just coming on playing something else, and she liked it, and so then we have to listen to it often, and then it just sort of we're in a salt and pepper wave.
She's got taste. She knows.
She's like,
she knows the bounce when she hears it.
She doesn't fully know the word, so she'll come into the room. She'll be like, "Dada, can we play Salt and Pepper's Here?" And I'm in a vet, and I'm like, "You're in a vet? What? Are you? You're caring for animals? What are you talking?" I'm like, "It's in effect."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Yeah, in a vet."
Look,
and
she's
right.
she's like most of us, bungling our way through the lyrics to most songs.
Yeah. Housekeeping. We wanted to make a quick, I guess, note. We are, hyper aware of sort of the conflict and the sort of, I guess, volume that the conflict in Ukraine is taking up in news cycles and things like that, and sort of the weight that it is having on people, and the alarm that it creates, and the fact that that's also not the only conflict that's happening in the world. But we're also hyper aware that we are not foreign policy experts. This is not our domain of expertise, and I don't think the world needs us weighing in on these things. There are much smarter people out there that are having much more measured, informed conversations about these things. So, at least for now, and I can't imagine a world in which we're going to wade into that subject matter. We are going to abstain, which I think is a good idea. If you're still looking for a break of whatever the type of nonsense that it is that we bring to the world, give yourself a little respite. We're here for that. If you, feel like your mode and mind are not in this space, we'll welcome you back when the time is right. We'll still be here. But we just wanted to make a note of that. I think it's a conscious decision not to wade in on those things. No one needs to hear from us on this. So that's where we're at.
And as we have been, we'll add again, if you're interested in supporting the ongoing effort to combat the humanitarian crisis going on in Ukraine, we have links of ways to aid in the show notes.
On to the nonsense, as Alex Contel said. We're crediting him. He's putting his hands on his head. He's like, that's not the stamp I want on the world. Jess.
Joey.
I came across an idea recently, as you might guess, in a tweet.
Classic.
where I get my like random chaos exposure. It makes it sound like I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I don't. I maybe spend like half hour a day or something like that.
Look how much you derive from it.
It comes back to that, like, trying to curate your timeline if you can. But I came across a tweet from Helen Rossner, who is a writer for The New Yorker. And it said, "The fact that even furniture is starting to have such short trend cycles is very alarming. What is everyone going to do with their nubby white Sherpa side chairs in 5 months?" And it was just like an idea that I was completely oblivious to. The idea, as I went through the threads, that there is basically a fast fashion equivalence in furniture that has emerged, is emerging. To be candid, I'm not totally sure. But it made me realize, the conversations increasingly people are becoming a lot more aware of the impact that fast fashion is having on the world, on sort of the environment, all of these things. And, I think had I not known about this or was not digging into some of the fast fashion things recently, I would have expected that maybe we were moving in a more positive trend line. But it seems like despite our knowledge of this sort of problem with disposability, we continue to go further down the rabbit hole in this sort of like disposable culture, accelerating timeline or trend lines, forcing us or maybe not forcing us, but sort of like nudging us in the direction of buying more cheaper disposable things. And so my question for you, Jess, is what do we do about disposability culture?
Woof. It's interesting because I think at the top of the pandemic, we might have said, oh, wow, this is such a period for reflection and reevaluation that people are starting to realize I don't need most of this trash. And yet it is interesting to think that maybe that didn't do anything here. I like surprisingly didn't make as big of an impact as we might have prognosticated at that time, to use our favorite forecasting term, right?
Yeah, totally. I think, there were signals, right? Like you bringing this point up, if I'm looking back, it's like people were just like throwing away all of their furniture when they were moving out of New York. Yeah. And I don't know everyone. I just know the neighborhoods I was like walking through to like be outside at the beginning of the pandemic. But you would just see like a whole apartment in like the garbage pile.
Yeah.
And some of it was like not necessarily great stuff that you would want to keep. They're like, pretty worn. But like there was a lot of stuff that looked like perfectly fine furniture that people were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm moving out of the city. And I found an article about this sort of fast furniture trend. And it said in 2018, the EPA found furniture accounted for more than 12 million tons of municipal waste in the United States.
Whoa.
I was like, what? That sounds like a big number. I guess I don't have like a baseline comparison, but 12 million tons is a lot, right? Like add 3 zeros to the back end, multiply by 2, and you get pounds. So it's a lot of pounds. And I don't know. I think that dynamic between sort of the increased realization, right? Like in a time of like many global issues, the, war, the environmental crisis, the, global health crisis, and sort of this reappraisal. I think I was anticipating something to become, like to move in a more positive direction, like you were saying. And at the same time, I can sort of understand why this accelerated, like fast fashion not disappearing, in fact, moving faster, right? Like companies like Shein, which I was unfamiliar with Shein. Also,
Very
like
popular,
I'm not the target.
fast fashion brand. Yeah, super popular.
Yeah, I'm not the target audience, right?
Yeah.
But they're using machine learning algorithms to like analyze photos of influencers to be able to like produce items of clothing, either copying or like merging designs of many influencers in like within 24 hours or something crazy like that. And so like it's not going slower, it's going faster. And I don't really know what to do about it, right? Like I was saying to you at the beginning, it feels like with sort of the places in which social media is occurring now, right? Like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and even YouTube to a degree, it's so visual that I guess imagine why that like shifting orientation to aesthetics and feeling the need to like stage your home or stage your Instagram photos would become a thing, I guess.
Also, knowing the way certainly like the fashion and textiles industry works, which I am certainly no expert, but having worked on brand work for a fashion company, the industry is deeply complex and slow moving in every part of it, and the efforts to move towards what is called the circular economy, a world where at every step, both from the consumer, like you and me, to the manufacturers to the design, that whole system has to, and waste as an element of that, waste and recycling as a key component to renewing and kicking off the circularity of this term is just, it requires so much movement. And there's another facet of this, I feel like, that we already have, I guess, the systems in place for the easy thing, the non-circular, the linear economy, as it were, where you dump the thing and you start again. So maybe it isn't a surprise that even if there had been a glimpse, and there are continuing to be glimpses of this reappraisal, it's more of a low and slow bubbling version that it might have seemed like there was a moment for a really quick dramatic turnaround, but actually it's maybe more than anything a signal that soon change should happen, will be happening, but maybe unfortunately or disappointingly not as soon as we hoped.
Yeah, it's like I just did a quick search as you were talking about that of like, are people, is it that it is both slowing down on one end and accelerating on the other end and sort of canceling itself out? I think, like we've talked about this. I don't necessarily buy a lot of things, but as I've gotten older and been, more financially stable, I've like just bought fewer, nicer things that last a long time, including like for furniture or things like that. You have that like cost benefit analysis of your bed or your couch or something like that, and you're like, I spend way more time with, my body on these things than I do on like other things that if you equated the amount of time spent, like I'm using them. And so I don't know, you see all this data pointing towards like people wanting to buy better things, and you see things from companies saying like, we're trying to become, it feels like they're having trouble finding each other in this process. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe too there's an element to this of the sort of clumsy process of quality assurance signaling that, maybe people do want something that is good, but what looks good is not the same. What might look good, it does not per se signal that it is good, and maybe those mixed signals aren't going to immediately show themselves as a problem, but despite good intentions to find something better or longer lasting, they'll realize this in a few years.
Yeah, it is interesting to be like, if you're going to buy a thing and, you know, I don't know, you're a 27-year-old, like the world of fashion that you've grown up in, if you didn't have like tons of discretionary income, was like, if you were investing in your own clothes, you were probably just getting really cheap stuff. And so your ability to distinguish what is, you know, outside of just human factors of being like, this feels a little thicker or whatever, but like, you've grown up in a world that was full of fast fashion. And so the ability to say like, I want a nice thing, where do I find a nice thing, is hard.
Yeah. Or on the subject of furniture, all these people who are shifting up their living situation, moving into a home, moving to a totally different place, and suddenly realizing they need to buy a bunch of stuff. I went through this myself of realizing, okay, what do I need to know about buying a couch? I don't want to buy a bad couch that won't last or that isn't comfortable, but there are a ton of signals that are sort of fake signals of quality construction, when actually, you know, it's kind of just a sneaky tactic. And picking up on those things is something that maybe our parents and their parents were taught in a totally different way that is much harder to parse nowadays.
Yeah, there's the reason why so many DTC mattress companies came onto the scene was because there was effectively like a few like big mattress companies that owned all of the other mattress companies, and they were just like not making radically different products, but like some were more expensive and some weren't, and it was just really difficult to distinguish. But even now you look at it and you're saying like, I just want to buy the best mattress. Even if you go in with that mindset, it's like everyone has a different opinion, and there's so much clutter in the space that it's really difficult to distinguish on something like that. And it feels like other furniture is similar, right? Like you could, you know, if you find a frame for like a photo or something that you like the way it looks and it feels like real wood, maybe it's easier to distinguish. But like something like that, like a couch, right? Like how do you know like the durability of a thing that's like a new company, right? When I don't know what's a furniture company that shows up in podcasts like Article. I think that's one of them.
Definitely Article.
Yeah.
Like
Article furniture, like
are they
it's been
just good
around
at marketing
for a few years?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Is this going to be a heirloom piece, or is this just going to like fall apart in a year?
Yeah, that's tricky. And right, despite people's best intentions, could unknowingly make good or bad decisions. Just, well, we're figuring it out.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it from like, what are the market drivers, and when do we sort of cross a threshold of like, oh, went too far, right? Like there is sort of a company driver to like make the production of materials more efficient or cost effective or things like that sort of like drives down quality in favor of reduced costs to make it more accessible and things like that. And so even in the instances where you're saying like, I'd really just like to buy a pair of jeans that last me a year instead of, you know, like 4 washes or something, then like, where do you turn? Because all of the market forces is sort of like a race to the bottom based on cost. And so like, if you encounter a product that is like, okay, this actually is a high quality pair of jeans, but it's, you know, $160, I'm making this up, $160 versus like a $40 pair that you encounter somewhere, but it is so anomalous to like the rest of the market. Like, how do you process that, right? Like, is that what I should be paying for like a good pair of jeans, and I buy one every, you know, time period a year, versus buying like 6 pairs of shitty ones that don't last, and the sort of like needs of buying 1 pair of jeans a year versus 5 pairs of jeans a year is very different, right? Like you want a more versatile article of clothing versus like a more specified cheaper thing, right? Like my like clubbing pants. Right. This is said as someone who knows a lot
Your
about
clubbing
hitting
pants?
the club. Yeah. Or versus like my work pants versus my, date pants. I don't know.
I mean, talk to anyone who is really into the world of sustainability, and the first thing they'll tell you is like, you can just get a thing that already exists for clothes, consignment, and thrift, and for furniture. Everyone I know jumping on, admittedly, like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, or these places where you can just be trading up. And I think you're starting to see a lot of players too trying to get in on that. Trying
Mm-hmm.
to claim good for the world by just having some amount of filtration of quality assurance between a previously owned something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I was Craigslist or don't buy anything or rebuy for a long time. And like my current couch is like a nicer couch where I finally did it, but I had a couch from Craigslist that I actually reupholstered twice. Like that was like an IKEA piece of furniture that was already used for, 8 years. I just like bought new coverings from like damage or things like that.
Which is itself a concept that many don't even process, of like, what if this is salvageable for even my own use? Is a like my mom being like, oh, just you sew it up. You just sew that up. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I came home the other day and one of my favorite shirts had a hole in the elbow, and I was like, this is one of my favorite shirts. And Becky was like, I'll darn it. And I was like, wow, darn it. Right.
Darn it. Yes.
That's a thing that you can do. Like, I don't have to go buy a new shirt.
Yeah.
I can just darn this elbow hole.
You don't need
I felt pretty good about that.
elbow hole.
Darn it. And also what was going through my mind was like, right. The phrase darn it is like something bad happened. I'm going to have to fix it. Is that where like
Really?
the origin of it comes from?
No idea.
Okay. Darn it.
Darn it.
I think that brings us to Jess's darning corner.
Our penchant for disposing of things and waste, we found ourselves not moving far from in recent times, even though there may have been hints that there could be a new awakening of being even more sustainable and even more focused on long-lasting things. But not only is our, an everyday person like you and me up against some confusing mixed signals about how to figure out what even that might look like, there's also a really complex industry that is still in a very slow-moving process of trying to design itself for that kind of need. And so we're left continuing to throw a bunch of probably fine stuff away, and it's terrible. So just make like Joey's shirt hole and darn your stuff, and don't buy horrible trendy furniture if you don't actually think you're gonna like it.
Yeah. Apparently don't buy a white Sherpa, nubby
Don't buy a
Sherpa
nubby
chair, I guess.
Just get like a blanket maybe. And then
I think the answer is reduce, reuse, recycle.
that might honestly is really long-standing effective advice.
Yeah.
Also, all of this said, I have found myself wanting new clothes. Is that horrible?
Buy expensive clothes. Just less of it.
Buy
That's
expensive things,
and I was like,
because that's a signal of quality.
I mean,
Just
you're
kidding.
still going to have to do your own research probably, but
Doesn't have to be
your
expensive.
mileage may vary.
Just about the durability and the quality of the make, Joey. We just have to keep our eyes peeled and be judicious about our choices. I have to be fully responsible for assessing the quality of the things that I consume.
There it is. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Recycling. It's pretty cool.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and Arbor Day President Jess Vander.
Makes me sound like such a nerd. I'd also like to thank our sound engineer and fashionista, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator, an angel amongst us, Les Jacobs, DJ Little Tiger. Bah, bah, bah.
And thanks to production help and the Sherpa of my heart, Sarah Gilbert and Nora Master.
Sarah is sort of like a nubby Sherpa chair. As always, thanks, Elen.
Thank you.
Special thanks to maybe nubby Sherpa chairs?
When you say nubby, you mean like boucle, right? Like that new, not new. It's a long, has been around for forever, but like it has those little bumpy bits.
That sounds right. When I looked up pictures of nubby Sherpa chairs, white Sherpa chairs, I was like, that looks kind of like them. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's not like,
but again, I'm out of my depth here, outside of just saying like, I guess buy better things again, right? Like this is like me looking at a trend. I know nothing about it and I'm not living, and I'm just like, that's happening.
Special thanks to a very useful couch testing technique, wherein, especially if you are a person who wears things that don't cover your entire legs all the time, you should try sitting on a couch with like shorts on, because you need to know what the fabric feels like on your underleg, because otherwise you could be stuck in a very uncomfortable chafe situation. And that would be horrible.
I got a performance velvet couch.
Wow. Speaking of performance, don't even get me started on performance fabrics, which in some ways are performance and in other ways have other different care issues over time. See, this is just the whole of the issue, Joey.
Care. Wash in cold water. Wash less frequently. Care for your clothes.
Other certain fabrics are naturally performing without having to have it. It's a whole thing.
Merino wool.
I'm sold on merino wool. We just make like
special thanks to merino sheep.
I would love to thank sheeps while we're at it on this subject of thanking sheeps. I personally would like to thank sheeps again.
Thank you, sheeps.
Sheeps.
And with that,
bye.
Thank you. Bye. Cut that, Alex.
Definitely don't cut that.
Don't cut it. Leave it. Cut it. Bye. I think that brings us to Jess's darning corner.
Background of ambulance. So think about
ASMR corner.
Yes. Because it's the same ambulance, given that we are neighbors.